Welcome everyone, John here from ContraBIM.com, where we bring you tools, training, and tutorials to help you become better with virtual design and construction. In today's tutorial, we're going to be modeling a steel structure very quickly for a 3-story commercial building, and then discuss how to generate different reports for quantities, cost, and so if you work with steel structures, hopefully you'll learn a few tricks that can make your life easier when you are modeling structural steel for your project. So we're going to start here this is in our in the virtual library, the ContraBIM virtual library. And what we're looking at is this is essentially a selection of different steel elements. And actually all of these elements here, these columns and beams, we're going to be mainly using the object tool. So underneath our library, we're going to be mainly using steel beams and steel columns, using the steel shapes available to us based in the just the default library provided by ArchiCAD. So this library that we're going to be using is the US library. So depending on where you're at, your elements might vary slightly, but hopefully it's all close enough where you can follow along and really get some value out of this video. So so what we see here in 3D is I actually have a few different groups of elements here. Some really heavy steel that's really intended to be used for structural moment frames and lateral bracing. Then we have a number of other columns here. Some really fat columns that are intended to be supports in more of the interior sides of the building. And then we have additional beams that aren't necessarily part of the moment frame system, but are there for providing deck support and support around different openings. So we also have a few different other types of elements here. We have some tube steel columns and beams, some angles, and we even have a base plate assembly over here that you can use to create the different custom base plates that you might need for your different column configurations. And finally, we have a few actually some layout points here that are just kind of predefined and set up and ready to go, that we can actually go through and generate layout points specific to those points of interest that you might want to lay out in the field. So so let's go back. I'm going to jump right now just to our 2D view. So essentially this is what we're just looking at, and what I've done here is I've saved this out as a module, and we can do this again, and I'll show you. Just if we select all this, we can go right up here to File, External Content, Save Selection as Module. And so I'm going to be working with this 0510 structural steel framing module, which is actually part of our episode file. So for those who are members of the ContraBIM network, you can go ahead and grab these files and follow along with us as we go through it. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll just save this and replace that file. And at this point, let's jump over to our project file. And so what we're going to be starting with here in ArchiCAD is this is just kind of the basic project template file. There's really nothing in here except for some grid lines and some sections and some of the kind of the predefined views. But our first step here will really be to create a grid that we want to use for our steel structures. So I'm going to go up here under Design, and we'll be using the grid system to do this very quickly for us. And actually you have some default settings in here. Anytime that you go in and create a grid, it actually retains all those settings from your previous time. So we could actually create objects at intersections for columns, either using the object tool or the column tool, but we're going to do that manually today just by grabbing things from our module and placing them within the project. Same thing with the beams. We could have added beams directly from here. In this case we are not, so we'll just go ahead and move right on here. So our dimension lines, these are really kind of nice to have included because it'll set them off from essentially the anchor point on your grids. So we're setting our total dimension at 2 feet from our grid markers, and then our dimensions between grids at 4 feet. So that'll give us a nice kind of clean dimensions. And our anchor point is going to be our bottom left corner. I always like using this 0 point as the anchor and then having the project move in the positive X and positive Y directions. So let's roll up a few of these. We'll take a real quick look at the naming rules. So essentially my horizontal grids I'm going to be using as the numeric. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then on our verticals, which will be in the Y direction, we'll be using the letters. So, okay. In terms of our grid position, I actually want to use these settings that are predefined here, and I'll explain why real quickly. But essentially, the grid that we're looking for is I want it to be more long in the X direction than in the Y direction. I kind of want a rectangle, and so in my my horizontal grids here, I'm going from 0, I'm going up 10 feet, and then 30 feet, 40 feet, 30 feet, and 10 feet. So it's we'll have from the perimeter, we'll have two 10-foot spaces on both ends, and then on the interior we have actually 30s, 40s, and 30s. So that'll be kind of a nice clean layout for a commercial type building. And then in the other direction, we're going to also keep that 10-foot spacing from our original anchor point, and then we'll just do 20-foot spacing all the way down to the end. So we'll have 12 axes on our in our Y direction. So okay, so with that, I think we're all set. We're set to our controls layer, and let's just go ahead and we'll click right there. And in this case, I'm not going to give it any rotation, but I'm just going to click right there. And okay, so there we go. We now have our grids. If I go to 3D here, we can see them. And okay, very nice. So at this point, I could also go back in through here, and if I wanted to, I could start placing grids and or sorry, not grids, but essentially views. So say if I wanted a grid line 2 section, I could actually take this view and just come over here and drop that right in and size it to my project. But I always like doing this later, really after going through the modeling process. So we're not going to do that too much right now. But okay, so at this point, we got our grid set up. We have all these views over here that are available to place into the model at any point in time. And let's take a look real quickly just at our story settings, just so we can see what we are working with. So each of our stories are going to be 15 feet tall. So we have we'll do a 3-story building, and then our roof will be set at 45 feet. And yeah, that's probably good for now. We could actually add in like a mechanical mechanical roof. Add one more, might be fine. And okay, so there we go. Let's hit OK. I'm happy with those settings. And so that jumped us up to that new story that we actually created. So we'll just go right back down to our street level. And at this point, let's go up here, and actually I'm going to pull up my folders here, and I'm going to come into my reference files. So this is the module that we overwrote. And I'm just going to take this and drag it right into my workspace. And all I need to do is just make sure that my stories are set up correctly. So we're just going to match our street levels. And yeah, we can adjust height of things to the host project. It doesn't really matter that much because we're working with objects in most of the cases. And so those objects aren't set to stretch to those stories anyway. So it really isn't going to impact much, depending on which one we choose there. But let's go ahead and we'll just add this in. And let's see, it just by defaulted over here, but I'm just going to take this whole thing and drag it all on over. And okay, so there we go. We now have these elements placed into our project, and we can really at this point just start taking things, dragging them over, and I'm going to just kind of use this as kind of like a boneyard or a warehouse file that's off to the side of our working project. And then once I've gone through and I've modeled all the elements, and I'm sure that I'm not going to need anything out here, I'll go back through and simply just delete this. So okay, well let's go in here and let's just start with some columns. And all these elements here were actually kind of picked off based off a specific project. We actually went through and, you know, reviewing the column schedules, went through and just kind of created a catalog of all the different column sizes and beam sizes that were specific to that project, as well as the interior columns, as I mentioned earlier, and then our primary beams, floor beams, and support beams as well as all those other details. So because that was I believe that was a 20-story tower, I'm actually going to use a little bit lighter steel for our frame because it's not so much load on these lower columns. I'm just going to actually grab, we'll probably do maybe like a W30 by 261 with a W30 by 116 as kind of our main structural elements on our moment frame. And I'm going to come over here and I'm actually just going to place it right there. And okay, so now we have our first columns placed into our project. And let's go in here, and actually what I want to do is essentially all the beams here, because we're going to be modeling those on our second floor. I'm actually just going to grab all those beam elements, and we'll actually grab some of the text there as well, for those at least, and yeah, all of these as well. So I'm actually going to take all of these, and we can just cut those, and we'll go up a story and we'll paste them. Okay, so we have our beams now on our second story, and we can actually see that one right over here. And so the reason I did that is just so that when we start modeling our beams, our second floor framing plan is essentially what we're going to be modeling with. And we could actually go to that view right now. If we go into our modeling views and we go into our shell and under superstructure, we could actually go to this view and we should see about the same amount of contents that we had there before. Some of our annotation was turned off. We go into our layers and turn that back on. Oh, where is it? Text and labels. We'll actually turn all this on. And okay, there we go. Well, okay, so it did add those in. Okay, so in terms of our elevations here, one thing that might be really kind of, I'm just going to actually turn this all back on. One thing to talk about is really just the height of our columns and where we want to set those. So typically I'd say that most base plates or the bottom of columns are probably going to be down about, it all just varies per column, and you know what's going on with the subgrade and everything else, the details of the project. But I'm just going to set this down. Maybe we'll just go down -2 feet for now on this column. And so let's actually just take a look at this in 3D. Okay, so there we go. Our bottom is two feet below, and maybe we'll kind of consider that as being our top of footing elevation. So maybe we'll do a slight elevation to this a little later. But really what I want to talk about here is the height of these columns. So in this case, if we're only doing a 3-story building, I think we can probably get away with a single column that takes us all the way up from our first story. That would be snapping to level 2. And it actually gives us those markers there where we'll probably just take these columns all the way up, because the total height of that column there, 47 feet, that's not unreasonable for a single column. If it was a higher building, then potentially we'd drop these down to maybe a few feet above our second story, and maybe we'd have 2 lifts of columns. But in this case, we'll just do a single column all the way up, and then we'll fill in the beams in between. So okay, so on my perimeter here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, just copy that. That's what was happening there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stretch these over for now. And so that beam, just so that we're noting where it is, that should actually be set. Let's look at our settings here, because again, right now we're actually on our level 2, so we're seeing that beam right now. And we actually want to set this down. We'll go -6 inches for now, assuming that our assembly on our metal deck that would be on top of this with concrete is a 6-inch thick section. So I'm actually going to push that down 6 inches, and probably actually do that with the rest of these as well, just so everything is down at the correct elevation. So I'm just going to deselect and select again, and we'll just push all these down as well, -6 inches. Okay, so there we go. And so really once I have this in here, I can go through, and on my perimeter columns, I'm assuming that each direction here is going to be a moment frame essentially. So I'm just going to take these and yeah, we can really just fly with them. And so let's just go ahead and we can do an increment and spread, and increment and spread, and pick path before input, no. And so just by clicking right here, 20 feet, we can pull this down, and there we go. So we got those in there. I can actually take this entire thing, and actually before I start mirroring it around, we'll do a little bit more work here. I'm going to close out my corner. Maybe I'll use a different beam for that right there. So maybe we'll just pick a floor beam, take this, pull it over, and it's on the corner here. So I'm going to set this, and because I'm going to be mirroring this stuff around, I'm just going to go ahead and give it an angle there. And okay, so there we go. And of course, we're not really paying too much attention to the actual size of these elements here, which is fine. We're not really trying to engineer this as we go. But yeah, this exercise is really more so for really looking at how to do this modeling really quickly, and how to look at the reporting. So let's pull this up. There we go. We have our first frame there. And so let's continue, and I'm actually going to just take a big chunk of this here, and I'm just guessing right now. I'm just going to take this and rotate it in this direction. And I'm okay if this doesn't 100% match up with my grids. And actually I got one extra one in here, so what I'll do is essentially just mirror this around. So and of course, whatever project you're working on when you're doing this, obviously you'd be bringing in your structural framing plan as a background, and then really just be referencing that as you add in your steel elements. In this case, just to show you kind of how I would do it, I would go to my my framing plan views here that are meant for my design document references, and I would just place on this plan either a PDF or a DWG of that structural framing plan. And so that's what I would be using to trace this out right now. But in this case, we're just going through the process of modeling it real quickly, and so I'm not going to do that in this case because it's obviously just a conceptual building. But yeah, we'll just continue on now, and to do that, I'm just going to, let's see, can I mirror this up? I can mirror it right in the center right there, and didn't quite work for me, but I always like mirroring when I'm doing stuff like this. And okay, so let's go ahead, and can we find a center point here? No, we can't either, but we can find one on that beam. And so that should get us pretty much right there. And we'll go in the other direction as well. So let's try this again. And I bet if I go right there, we're snapped directly on. Okay, so very good. Let's take a look now at our 3D. And okay, so we have our perimeter columns. We have our first lift of exterior beams. And yeah, let's go ahead and let's fill this thing in. So okay, so let's grab now, I'm actually going to go down a level. So going back to our first story, and I'm actually going to grab some columns. You'll notice that all of these columns here, they're all W14s, but they're actually arranged just in total weight on those elements. So just how much you need to support above it is essentially how those are arranged. So if these were stacked in a super tall structural steel building, then you'd start with a lower, obviously a much heavier column, and then as you go up in the building, you could decrease your weight as you start getting higher and higher. But in this case, I'm probably just going to grab something kind of in the middle of the range here, and let's take this, and I'm just going to drop these in very quickly. And I'm also going to set that. If we go to 3D, you can take that column and just snap it to match essentially the exact same height as the rest of our columns here. So a total of 47 feet on that particular column. And let's just take that and let's run through here, and essentially every single column. I might actually give these maybe a rotation. Let's just go and we'll spread this through. So there we go. And now let's do some of the interior beams. So I'm going to actually go up a level, and I'm going to go to a primary beam here. And how heavy is that? Oh yeah, let's go about a 30 by 116 is probably pretty good. So I'm going to go to those locations where I'm going to have those primary beams. And actually, I need to see that I have to grab all these columns, and let's change our settings here on our floor plan display so that we have it, because we're on our home story, we want it home story and 1 story up and down. Actually, in this case, I'm actually going to turn this on all stories, just so we see those on every single story there. And now that I'm thinking about it, all these exterior columns need to be set the same because we extended those full height. We definitely want to make sure that they're going to be showing up on every single level on this project. So let's just turn it on all stories, and there we go. So if we go up, level 2, level 3, our roof, and even our mechanical roof has all of them. So we could turn off that top level if we wanted, but for now we'll just leave it on. And yeah, okay, so there we go. And so let's just go, and I'm going to grab just that primary beam. And in this case, I'll probably connect it just pin to pin, which means right in the center. So I'm not going to do any adjustments to shorten these up. That's something that you can do during the detailing process. But in this case, I'm just going to be looking at doing my primary beams. I will adjust this over slightly so that it's attaching right there. But I'm just going to try to draw these essentially so that I'm not worrying too much about the connections between these. I'm just going to make them a pure connection where there is no gap or any space there. And in a case like this also, I could pull this back and just stop it right there. Depends on how you want to draw it. In the case of being just conservative and making sure that you have that full cut length, it might make sense to actually draw that a little longer, because if you were thinking about how this might get detailed, you'd probably notch the top and bottom of those flanges, and you might have a bit of a protrusion of that center web into that beam a little bit for that connection. But so okay, so let's continue now. And yeah, once we get this all in here, it's going to go very, very quickly. So this one here, we'll copy up, and one more here. These were actually the same length because we had actually that 10 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, 10 feet, sorry, 10 feet and 30 feet. Each of these bays is going to be the same distance. So let's pull this over. I'm going to grab these. Probably have to adjust both these. There we are. And okay, so even before I start dropping all this in, I might think about just how I want these individual spacings to be performed. So I'm going to start building these up on this side, and then we'll get to the point where we can just copy these and mirror it for the rest of it. So okay, so our floor beams, really I think probably like a W 21 by, I don't know, 57 or 76. That's probably the right range that we want to be for these intermediate beams. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to do a 50 in this case. And I'm actually going to just snap this one from right there. And let's kind of check our spacing here. So what is our spacing? 10 feet. That's actually that actually works okay for me. And in this direction, we can do just 10 feet. So I'm going to go 10 feet because we're on the increment, and there we go. And then in this other direction here, I might rotate this around, and let's snap it to our center point, and we'll take this just all the way in. So this is essentially a 40-foot beam that we have there. And really this one I'm going to actually pull over here too, because the reason I increased the size of this beam was because it was supporting this entire bay over on this side. But essentially from our perimeter here to the interior, we can really just duplicate these beams the entire way. And okay, so let's slowly just continue on here. And maybe since that's a shorter span, maybe I'll put some intermediates going the other direction. And maybe we'll be able to kind of shrink this down a little bit more also. Of course, this is all, the details on all of this is coming from the structural engineer. But in this case, we're just going to go through very quickly. And again, we're going 10 feet here. We'll do an increment and spread, 10 feet, and we'll just pull that out. So this is essentially this entire bay here. I can actually grab from, we'll just grab it from this point up. So we got 40 feet there, 40 feet there. So we pretty much have that done on that side. And then on the other side over there, now we actually have an object in the middle. And we can really just, we're at that point now where we can go through this, very, very quickly. And yeah, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to grab all the elements that we're going to be copying, and it's really just the interior elements, interior beams at this point in time. And I'm actually going to do the intermediates here a little later. We might have some additional areas to fill in. And in a commercial building like this, typically you'll have some sort of core in the middle, or it might be set to the outside. But wherever you're going to have your core and your stairs and all of your vertical penetrations through your building, that's really where you're going to need to do a lot of detailing out with some of these smaller support beams around those openings. And so in this case, maybe we'll fill that in as we go. So okay, let's go ahead and we can give this again another increment and spread. So I'm pulling this all the way down, and I'm going to take it to right there. And then on this other side, actually I need to delete these, because we had our little bit heavier steel supporting the end section. I'm gonna pick up this one as well, and let's just grab all these beams and that one and give it a little rotation, and we'll just zoom in to make sure that we're snapping to everything that we want there. Okay, so let's look at this in 3D now. So moving right along, and again, those the lengths on those beams, we can actually see them poking through there just slightly when we're zoomed out. Yeah, okay, there we go. And so let's continue on here, and maybe I'll just rotate these. I'll just every bay, maybe we'll do a little rotation there. I feel like often these areas are framed up a little differently, and they might even have a totally different configuration, such as extending this all the way over and just rotating these. So, but I kind of like how I had it before, and so I'm just going to, again, we can just do this with our, go 40 feet this time. Pull it through, and we'll get rid of that one. So okay, there we go. So that leaves us some additional areas here that we could add different. We have a little different configuration for just looking and modifying these beams on the interior. Okay, so let's now, if we're happy with that, let's take a look now at the report that we have, and so we will roll this up, and here under my reports, we'll take a close look at how these are assembled. But I'm going to open up my structural steel framing trade quantity report, and now we'll kind of dive into the settings of this particular schedule. And so the first thing here is we can see that we actually have a lot of stuff populated in this particular file. And actually that's a lot more stuff than what we've actually modeled right now. And the reason for that is obviously because we have all these elements off to the side. And so we could take all those and we could delete them out, and we'll do that at the end to kind of get a result of all the elements left in our project. If we had done that with a module, then we could have just filtered out our schedule here with a module itself just by adding in a well, actually we do have that on here, hot link module. We can add these in so that it will filter out our modules, but in this case we actually dragged and dropped it in, and so that's fine. We'll just continue as is. We can actually remove that because it's not really doing anything at this moment. But so you can see here for this particular interactive schedule that I've set up for the structural metal framing, you can see that we are just searching for all element types, and all we're doing is if it has this CSI code of structural metal framing, it's going to populate onto this particular quantity report. And if we actually come down here, we can see which elements are made available. So we have a subset code, which is a property data. We have a home story element ID. I actually have a pricing package in here. And some of the things I really want to point out is we have a profile, which is actually an IFC parameter. And so I'll show you how we put that together here in a second. But we have a few other things that are real important, such as our unit cost, specifying our unit, what type of element we're using, our length in this case is another IFC parameter, and then a few other parameters depending on picking up some of the settings from more traditional design tools such as wall or columns and beams. So okay, so I'll hit OK here, and this will just reload real quickly. And okay, so we can see we have stuff for our base plates, and again, these are all kind of pulled off to the side of the project, which is fine. We'll take those and add them into our project here shortly. And okay, so if we look at this, we can see that we have several here, and what I really want to point out here is that this particular this particular parameter is actually coming from as an IFC parameter. And so let's go back, and I want to show you where that's actually coming from, because that's actually a pretty powerful tool that's part of the IFC scheme we are currently working in. So if I go to my IFC translators here, and if I actually go to, we're working on our in our translator for general export, which is kind of the default that you have set, or that we have set in this particular file. But here under our property mapping, it's actually set to a specific one that I've built for my template, which is called ContraBIM Property Mapping 21. And if we go into here and we actually just select this preset that we have saved, and we go into our map IFC properties for export, let's expand this, and I'll show you where some of those additional parameters are coming from. So I believe if I go down here under my IFC element, I have them located on this level. And if we expand here and we go to our length and our profile and our weight, you can see that under this 3DC structural steel, we have three different custom parameters that we have set up. And these, what's nice about these is these will actually go into the properties embedded within the specific library parts themselves, and essentially if it's available, it'll go through and it'll consolidate these and populate it depending on what that element is drawn with. So for each of these, for example, say if we go into like a W column, if I click on down here, we have a rule content set up, and the way that you would add this in is you'd actually come in here to add content from our library part parameters. And within our parameters here, we would go under our, what are we looking for? We're looking for our ArchiCAD library 21. And under our object library, under our metals, we essentially go in and we filter to try to find the, the specific objects that we're using, so that we can retrieve those property values. So under structural metal framing, we just keep diving into this library here. We're actually looking for a column, a W column, and so I would go to my steel columns, W column, and so this is where those parameters become available. And I always like just filtering them by the type here. And so you come down here and we can actually just look for the specific okay, so it's our column height right here is what we had added. So if I actually take this and add it again, we can see that we'll have two of them here, the exact same thing. And so that's just how you add specific parameters to an IFC parameter here that's available for all different elements. And so that way it makes it available depending on if it's classified as a beam or a column or any of these other elements that might apply. So there we go. So we have that in there. I'm actually going to remove that one because we only want the single length there. But under our profile, you can see here that we also have all the profiles picked out for each and every type of element, depending on if it's a an L beam, an M beam, an S beam. So this is a way that you can take all these different parameters and consolidate it into one specific IFC property. And the other one that's really important here is the weight, because we actually need to go into our properties and we need to pull out the weight of that specific size and shape that we are using. So that's really important because we're actually going to be using that to assemble our estimate towards the end of this reporting process. So okay, so with that, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to hit OK and just kind of exit out of these. And so that's where these specific values are actually coming from for our profile, our weight, and I think we even had over here our length right there. And so that's how these are becoming populated. And we can see here we have some that are 47 feet. We actually have 32 of that one specific type, and then 16 of our interiors. So once we delete the other ones, all these are yeah, we'll only have the ones left in our project. So okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and let's go in now, and I'm just going to take really I'm going to take all those beams. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Control F, and I'm going to find based on the element ID, and I'm just going to pick up one and pick up the parameters. And so I'm just looking for all the W beams there. I'm going to grab all of them, and I'm just going to do a copy, and we'll go up a story, paste them, go up another story, paste them again, and so now we should have a very conceptual structural steel building there. And okay, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to actually grab all these columns here because now I notice that we had snapped them to the top of our roof level, but because all of our beams we set to 6 inches below our story height, we can actually go in, and I'm just going to grab all of my columns here, and we will just set the top there to 46'6". There we go. Okay, and yeah, of course, if this was a sloping roof here, then we could take these beams and start doing some modifications just through the angles and then doing some slight adjustments. But that's something that does take a little bit of time, and without having specific values there for setting the angles on these beams, it's really not necessary at this point in time. So, all right, well, let's go back and let's go in and let's think just real quick about some of the additional steel that we might want here. And so what I might do is maybe we'll go in and let's talk about base plates. Let's add some base plates just real quickly. So just pulling this out of kind of the boneyard that we had there on the outside, we can see that there's a few different elements in here that we can use for creating a different base plate assembly. So I'm actually going to take this entire thing, and let's just control or grab all of this, and from this center point here, let's just find, I'm actually going to add a quick little reference here. I'm just going to give it a cross section and grab all that, take it from that center point there, and I'm just going to copy this over, and let's just see how this fits with this particular column. So it actually fits okay, but these base plates are probably, those anchor bolts are probably a little too close to that column itself. And so what we might do is maybe let's extend this out another 2 inches. And we actually have 2 slabs here. We have one for our steel and one for our grout. So I'm gonna push this out in both directions. And maybe in this case I don't want to be using all of, maybe I want to use a strip anchor plate versus the individuals. So let me just deselect these right there. So let's delete this, and I'm going to take this and pull it over. And so, okay, so there we go. That's close enough for our base plate assembly. So next thing here is I probably want to take all of this and adjust it so it's at the correct height. And so, yeah, we can see here that obviously a quick adjustment is needed. And so depending on what the footing height elevation is, that's what I would set this to. But in this case, I'm just going to snap it right there, and that's probably fine. I could actually change this. Say if 2 feet was the top of our footing, maybe I could take this and we'll just adjust this up. So I'm going to go to Z, so I'm going to go -2 feet. So that would be essentially setting the top of our footing at the bottom of our grout. And then from there, we can, of course, adjust our column height. So now we've gone down to 46.2, so we're dialing in that height a little bit. And now we're also adding base plates for all of our different columns here. So, okay, so with that, let's see, I'm going to actually, because I'm going to copy this around, I'm going to adjust all those column heights. So let's grab all of these that are W columns. I'm going to deselect that one. And this is why I love working in 3D in ArchiCAD, is because it's so easy to just grab an element and snap it to the right height. So I say that, but because I had several of them picked up there, it's actually wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. It's just because it's moving a lot of these at once. It's essentially stretching all of these columns. So I want to just really zoom in here and snap it right to that corner right there so we can get that right elevation. And okay, yeah, 46.2. So we're good. Okay, so at this point, just so we get the right counts on all of these base plate assemblies, I'm actually just going to take this and we can copy this around super quickly. So what's interesting is why that outline is larger. I don't know if there's a good answer for that, but hopefully we're not doing anything and copying something we're not intending to. So we'll just go through this real quickly. Get all those perimeters in. And then let's grab one of them here. I'm just going to select all. And you can see the way I'm doing this is I'm just selecting them and then deselecting my column, so I'm not copying my column around. And let's just take this over and see how it fits on this other column. So, so that's a little too big, I would say. We actually need to be extending these in probably the other direction. So I'm going to push this 3 inches that way for both that grout and the base plate itself. And I might take all of these here. And maybe let's just build one from scratch, just so I can show you how I typically do it. So let's grab all of this, except for that. Delete that out. So okay, so what I might actually do is I'm just going to draw a new thing here. And so which one did I copy? I think I copied my grout. So I need to pick up my cast iron. I'm going to pick that up, and I'm going to just do the exact same thing here. So I'm just drawing it right on top of that column right there. And maybe we need, in each direction, maybe we need, I don't know, 6 inches in this case. And so we'll just create a base plate based on that. And there's probably a bunch of different ways that we could actually draw this in. I'm going to offset this maybe 2 inches from our side, 2 inches from our side here. And who knows, maybe let's just go in our X direction, let's go 1 inch. Our Y, let's go -1 inch. We'll just inset that slightly. And so let's just see if we can get a little creative in how we want to apply this. So of course, there's a lot we can do in terms of mirroring. So to get it going in this direction, I'd probably just mirror it. And then from there, I might just do distribute -1, create 2 copies, and go with it. So that's probably the quickest and easiest way. And from here, I could then just take these, take them all, mirror them in this other direction. We could give these some rotations. Oh, mirror them. Mirror them again. So there we go. We now have that entire assembly with our base plate. And so for the other ones, you might have noticed that I actually had one long one there. And so what we could do is, if I did want that, all I was really doing was I was taking just one of the rows, and in this case what I would do is I'd probably just copy one to right here and then try to measure what that total width is. So it's 2 foot 3 1/8. I'm just going to copy that and set that right there, paste it in. There we go. And so if I wanted to do kind of that longer anchor plate at the bottom, that's how I would add those in. But of course I would then want to adjust probably my cost on that as well. So what is the cost I have in here? 25 each. Yeah, if I'm doing a long one, probably it goes to at least $100. So okay, there we go. So here we go, 2 different variations of the same thing. So okay, let's go ahead and we'll grab all these and we'll group them up. We could save them as an object if we wanted and just apply a single price to this entire thing, but in this case let's just go ahead, grab all those, and then we'll finish this out. So increment and spread. There we go. All right. Okay. Let's bring back this whole project. So there we go. Full structure, all the base plates in, and you know, with different column sizes. Of course, all these are going to be modified, and it's all based on the specific design. But there we go. Oh, let's see here. What else do we want to add real quickly? Maybe we'll add some tube steel. Maybe we'll just come in here and let's think about how we might actually want to go up a level. Shoot. Change this to, just set this to all stories for now. Let's go up a level. And who knows, maybe if we set this over 5 feet, I'm thinking about elevator tube steel. So maybe I would just offset this in. Let's just go maybe, I don't know, 1 foot. Maybe we set these inboard, and maybe we just do this. Let's kind of think about our spacing here. So maybe, I don't know, if we mirror this around, what's our total spacing from one side to the other if we had just an entire bank of elevators? Probably more than what we might need. but from one to the other end, 38 feet. So maybe if we did, maybe we could squeeze in 4 elevators in there. So if we spread this out, just do distribute with 2 copies in the middle. There we go. So that's just some, you know, references there for different bracing. So that's a 12'8" spacing. So if I go 6'4", rotate this one around and set it foot in there, that's probably about good for an elevator. So let's just add in a few more here. Okay, so now at least we have just like a few basic you know, guide rails there for elevators. We can certainly take some of this tube steel and add in some different supports here as well. So just kind of guessing at this point in time what we want to do here. But let's just add these in. Okay, good enough. Take a look at them. There they are. So I could create some little base plates for those as well. But for the this point in time, let's just we're just going to stretch the height of these. I'm in the middle of a command right now. 42 feet. We'll just set those all the way up, and let's try one more time just to stretch them. So now we probably don't have these on, you know, they're probably not, obviously they're not going to be that long. They'll probably be about half this height. Maybe we'll just set them to 20 feet tall. And right now they're set to all stories. I'm going to actually change this back to home story and 1 up and down. And then I'm going to take all these and we'll just stack them up. And I'm going to change this so it's on level 3. And actually going to pull it up. And okay, good enough for now. And with the penthouse here, we'd probably extend these up even further. But yeah, so I'm getting to the point where probably ready to wrap this up here pretty soon. So, okay. Is there anything else we want to add in right now? I think we're probably pretty good. We won't mess around with layout points. We actually got that coming up here in a tutorial coming up, talking about how to create layout points and run reports on that. So I'm just going to at this point, oh, you know what? Maybe we could add one more thing up top. Maybe we could add like some sort of mechanical screen, or let's do that. Let's add a mechanical screen. So let's go now. I'm going to go down to my first floor level. I'm going to copy this 8x4 and let's just go up to our roof level. I'm going to paste that. And from this point, maybe we'll just do this directly on our kind of central frame here. Actually, we'd probably have a structure coming out of these, so maybe we could extend this out just slightly. So what I might do, actually, this is a nice reason for drawing in just a reference line. I'm just going to change my settings here. Let's make this red so it pops out. And let's just draw in about where we think a mechanical screen might go. So maybe from there to there. I'm going to undo it, redo it, just to select those, undo or suspend my groups. And maybe if we push this out 10 feet, that kind of gives us a nice clean line for where we're targeting with our mechanical screen here. So from here I might just grab my columns And the spacing here is real easy because I just know that it's going to be 10 feet. But before I do that, actually maybe I'll do this in this other direction. The long way first. Let's go down, and I'm going to grab some of those beams. Tube steel. And I'm just going to grab a, just take an 8x4. And we'll probably just cut this, take it up to our roof. Let's paste it. And 8x4 might be a little larger than what I want. Maybe I just want to do like a 4x4. So we'll go in and we'll modify this. Kind of point out the main settings that we have. So, okay, so the way that we change the size of these is simply just by going into our shapes here. Each of these different library parts have a different shape. So this is going into the library here. And just pulling out, where is that? 4x4. Let's just do that. And let me just check my name. So yeah, I just called it tube steel beam because I'm pulling out that profile. So it'll automatically know that profile for me. And let's just go here and set the height of these elements. So modify this so it's stuck right on top of our height there. Probably pull this up and maybe set this around, I don't know, 4 feet. And we'll do 1 at the top there. So, okay, good enough. So that's, you know, good enough to represent our mechanical screen. And so from this point, I'm just going to grab this entire string, except for the last one that we have there. And we'll just take this and, yeah, let's just go ahead and increment and spread. Once again, that's my favorite method for multiplying. Take it to right there. And I'm just going to grab this entire leg here. And I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to go over 3, 6. Take this whole thing and just rotate a copy. I'm actually going to delete that last one. I'll probably have to do a slight adjustment there. But let's grab all these. Again, I'm using that dotted line as a reference here. And okay, almost there. I think I'm copying that. I don't want that. Actually, that just exposed that. I need to extend this one also. So if I don't want to select my columns, I'm just going to kind of go right inside of it. So I'm not picking up any nodes there. And we'll just come straight over to here. And oh, a few little, just by selecting them, I could see that that node needs to be extended also. Glad I picked that up. Okay. There we are. 3D. Let's see it. Pull back the whole thing. Okay, so good enough for now. Alright, so at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to delete all this. And let's take a look at what we have now in our schedule. So structural metal framing. See how this is all organized and calculated. Okay, so we have our base plates. We're actually estimating that base plate, which is done with those slabs based on tonnage. So when we go into Excel, we'll take a look at that. I'm going to make this slightly smaller. That's one thing I wish that they had was the option to set this to 75. 75 would be perfect. But I don't think there's a way of doing a custom view on these schedules, or I just haven't figured it out yet. But let's go back here. So got our units. So we've set most of these elements are set to being estimated by tonnage. And so I have everything set as a 3,500 per ton. So that's how I'm estimating majority of this here. Some of these other items, such as our anchor bolts, we're just doing them by piece counts, so we can see how many anchor bolts, how many different elements we have here. I'm wondering if that might have been, let's see if that's actually accurate. So yeah, those are not square, these are actually long, or oh, what are they? They're the strip. So that should update that for us. That's a nice thing with these interactive schedules. It gives you the opportunity to go back and forth and really double check your data. Double check that you've inputted things correctly. So two different ones there, but they're slightly different sizes because some are intended for those perimeter columns and some are on the interior. So a lot of those. And okay, so at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go in here to our working file. And under our Episode008 structural steel, let's go to our reports. And I'm going to actually open up this estimate template here. And let's check out our structural steel. So, okay, so we don't have anything loaded into this file just yet. So let's go to our data sources. And I really need to check my steel. And I can see that I was playing around with this a little earlier. But let's go in here and... Okay, so let's check our location for where we are publishing our data set to. So under my Excel data here, I'm going to go to my publishing properties. And let's just double check our folder. And okay, so it's already set up. We're already exporting from our publisher to this reports folder for Excel data. So we are all set there. So I'm going to hit OK, and let's just go in here. We'll go to our trade quantities, CSI, structural steel. We're just publishing just our selected. So I'm going to go ahead and hit publish. Close. We'll go back to our sheet and let's just refresh this. Okay, so there we go. We have all of our data loaded in. If we refresh it again, we can kind of see the extents. And okay, so that's looking pretty good. Yeah, so our total here in terms of total cost, we're looking at about 2.6 million. Let's do a real quick calculation just to kind of see what that turns out to be in terms of pounds, because typically for office buildings like this, I think what's our square footage here? I think we're typically in the range of 14 pounds, maybe 15 pounds a square foot. So we have 24,000 square feet, and we're supporting 3 levels. So let's just do this real quick. 24,000 times 3. So we got about 72,000 square feet of supported area with our steel structure. So let's go back here and see if we can get this to work. So let's see. I do have a sum if up here. If it's under tons, it should sum my total quantities. So is that not working? Okay, let's it doesn't look like this tonnage is quite working just yet. Let me check this formula. So we're doing a sum if, and we're picking our range for our criteria, which is this range for tons. I think we gotta add in, I need some parentheses there, and then our sum range is our G column there. So let's try that. Okay, so that looks like that's working. So 746 tons is what we have on this project. So let's just do a quick calculation here. Total square feet. So we got 72,000. And actually, you know what? I think, let's see, 72,000 square feet is our supported. And actually, I might be wrong on that. I think that pounds per square foot might actually be for total. So if it was, let me check, we'll check this both ways. 24,000 times 4, if that included all 4 levels, would be 96,000. So we'll check this both ways. So 96,000 And so here, let's just do our tons divided by our square footage, and we're actually going back to pounds. So this is pounds per square foot. So 20. That might be a little heavy. Let's try this again though. If it was supposed to include our ground square footage times 2,000. Okay, so that actually puts us right in that range of 15,000. So I think that might actually be the number we're supposed to be using for total gross square footage in terms of pounds per square foot on total project. So we got both those options. That's something I should probably go back and check. If it is the supported area, then that would probably be a little heavy, and we could probably cut out some of the tonnage. But if it is based on total gross square footage here, then that actually would be right in the ballpark. So okay, so with that, I think that pretty much concludes this tutorial. Hopefully you enjoyed the workflow for how we went from pretty much a project from scratch to quickly modeling in a conceptual steel model. So we got those base plates in there, we got our columns, full height columns, beams, we got our heavy moment frame steel for our perimeter, we have our interior columns and different support beams. So yeah, I enjoyed doing this tutorial. Hopefully you learned a few things that you can use on your own projects, and yeah, we will definitely be talking more about structural steel in the future, and really kind of breaking down these processes even further, and really dialing into some of the specifics of particular project types and building systems. And with that, I'm going to end this tutorial here, and check us out next week. I think we are going to, we're going to be playing around with IFC files and importing IFC into ArchiCAD. So we're going to be walking through the workflow of how to take an IFC file. We'll probably use a Revit file as an example, and we'll probably we'll walk through that workflow for how to import and take a look at some of the different settings there. So okay, thanks for checking out this video. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoy this type of content, and if you want to receive all of our latest updates and everything. And with that, I'm going to sign off right here. But if you have any questions about anything in this whole tutorial or workflow, then please be sure to add comments down below. And in the show notes from today, I'll definitely go through and add in some specific points of time where we cover some of these different features, because I realize this video is a little bit long and it's tough to sit there and listen to the whole thing. But I'll definitely create a bit of an outline that allows you to really click and look at individual points in time where we covered a wide variety of different topics. So okay, I will catch you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching.